All right. Oh, I think, what are we? Episode 11. 10 or 11. I haven't got Nick here to tell me today, so I'm flying solo. Fernando's away too, so apologies for that. Fernando's got some business matters he's attending to tonight. But
Nice.
So, yeah, flying solo.
No, all good.
But thanks for coming in, mate.
No worries. It's a privilege.
Jono Kraenzlin.
That's it.
Yeah.
Kraenzlin.
Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, and I'm not even going to try and start to introduce you like this. You do. I've heard a couple of little snippets of your stories, and you sound like a bloody interesting guy, mate. So it's thanks for coming in at short notice.
No,
We're in the middle of a cyclone.
Yeah, what a night for it, eh? All right.
So I guess I don't know. Let's just start from the start, man, because you know, I know that you sort of grew up outside of New Zealand and grew up in a lot of different places. So, I mean, you just pick a start point, man. And
All right. Yeah, I was born in the Micronesian islands, so the island of Saipan. It's close to Guam, which is pretty much a U.S. military base. A little Pacific island in the northwest of the Pacific Islands. So, yeah, born on a small island.
how did you come to be born on a small island?
Well, all right, a bit of a backstory. Yeah. So my mum and dad, they're German. My mum's German British, and yeah, they left Germany, packed up the bags, and headed to the islands, and yeah, basically on a one-way ticket. Loved the Pacific, loved everything about the islands, and my dad's a keen sailor. He went to school in the North Sea, learned to sail, and then after they had my three siblings, they yeah, decided to pack it all up and head to the islands. So
By boat?
No, they flew in. They went into they flew into Hawaii, did a course there, and then moved over to the Micronesian islands and got supported by a church. Yeah, basically, I think found God, I suppose, in the 30s, and decided that they loved the Pacific people and wanted to go and help out and do what they can in the Pacific to help or just be part of the culture and that. So yeah, that's how we ended up there.
Yeah. So how many years were you there?
So I was about a couple of years in Saipan, and then shifted from there to Guam until I was 6. Yeah. Guam's a cool place. It's got a heavy history with World War II. It's basically Japanese had it, the indigenous people had it, and then the Americans, and then the Japanese came, and then the Japanese had it for a while, and then obviously some pretty gnarly wars were fought there.
Yeah, I suppose it was a
strategic place. Yeah. So a lot of history there, a lot of sad stuff that happened there, and a lot of
sad stuff, right?
Yeah, a lot of gnarly stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting place. Still very multicultural. Obviously, there's a lot of Americans, but there's still a lot of Japanese there. And then you have all the Filipinos, and then the indigenous people there. So, But yeah, did a lot of traveling. My dad got involved in all sorts of boat stuff, and so we had sailed around to a lot of the islands around there on Palau and Tinian and a lot of those places. Beautiful, absolutely.
Yeah.
Some of the most amazing cultures in some of those remote islands. Just absolute happiest people you'd ever meet. Just super basic, I suppose, but not basic in a way of. I suppose basic when it comes to the clutter of the West. I suppose just you're on an island. You have your food. You have your fishing. You have your amazing culture and family, and it's a pretty amazing lifestyle. Yeah, you boil it down to the basics. So.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people sort of. Would like to return to that sort of lifestyle. As the future goes on and technology increases, there's a lot of people going the other way for sure, mate.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I think the cool thing about a lot of the islands up there is they've actually, I suppose not resisted, but not, so I suppose being shut off to or said no to Western stuff. So still a lot of places up in those Micronesian islands where there's no Western influence.
Yeah.
They basically just said, if you want to come here, you need a permit and a good reason why you're coming here. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of places up there you'll still find today where there's no money, no currency. They're still using stone money.
Yeah.
So basically, your wealth is depending on how big the stone is in front of your house. Yeah. So
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And around your neck, you'd have stones, and so that's obviously your wealth. If you want to buy land or whatever, you trade stone. So
Is that right?
stone money, yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. I knew, I never knew that. You hear of, say, like pygmy cultures and some like far Amazon cultures that allegedly haven't seen the Western world, but I guess it's right there in the Micronesian islands.
Yeah, still happening. So
Yeah.
that's cool. Yeah, and lived there until I was about 6 or 7, and then my dad got offered a job over in Tonga, and so we flew over, stopped in Nauru, which is one of the only islands right in the middle of the equator. So it's like a little island rock. Basically got destroyed by mining. I think Australia or New Zealand mined it for some mineral that only had there, and that was pretty interesting stopping by there on the way through.
Yeah. And how old are you at this stage? Like 6
7, 6 or 7, yeah, one of those, yeah.
That's
Yeah, and then we moved to Tonga, and so that's Tonga was basically where I would say I grew up the most.
Yeah.
I was there from when I was 7 till about 14. Yeah, 6 or 7 till 14.
So you started your schooling there?
Started schooling.
It's quite a funny story that you told the other day about having to line up from smartest to not so smart.
Yeah. So I think the Tongan schooling culture is definitely influenced by New Zealand. If you, I suppose, rewind New Zealand 100 years, that's what school would have been like, I suppose.
Yeah.
So I think we still have this part of their curriculum and that over there. So, so like going to school there, you like I was saying the other day, you get seated in order from dumbest to smartest, and obviously everything's anything you do wrong is punishment by force, or what do you call it, corporal punishment, or So if you get your math test and you're under 50%, you get your test back with a whack over the hand, or dust thrown at you, or so it's a daily thing.
And it's a curriculum because it's Kingdom Tonga, right?
Kingdom, yeah. So they have a king.
Yeah.
It's changed a bit now, but back when we were there, it was very much a king and noble policy, which they've had for ages. So it's pretty cool. They're probably one of the only non-colonized, I suppose, island groups, as far as they any influence from England or the UK or whatever was by choice. Was never
accepted.
Never taken over.
Because it is a cluster of islands, am I right? Or?
Yeah, the Tongan group. There's a cluster of them. I don't know exactly how many, but Tongatapu was the main island. That's where we lived. We lived in a little village called Mua, we went to school, homeschooled a bit when we had to, but also went to school in just a public school there.
Yeah. And was the curriculum taught in English?
The school I went to was. So I was probably one of 5 out of 1,000 kids who were Western in the school. So it was mostly all Tongans, but it was one of the only English speaking schools. Tonga High School, Tonga Side School. So
because I went to high school with a bunch of Tongan lads and I played rugby with them and whatnot. So I sort of picked up a bit of the language, but at high school, you just learn the swear words, right?
Oh, yeah, exactly. 100%. No, some big boys. I was definitely puberty sits in about 11 or 12 over there compared to... Yeah. I was definitely... You don't pick any fights with no one, that's for sure. I actually... One of my probably scariest days at school once was the teacher went out and we got into like a paper fight. And everyone was just, rolling up balls and throwing... And I some stupid reason joined in and rolled up a bit of ball and threw it. I felt something hit the back of my head and I turned around, picked it up and threw it. And the biggest kid in our class, he must have been, close to 90 kgs, and we're like 11, 12 years old, built like he's like the first 15 captain. I turned around and threw this thing and his face was right behind me and I hit him in the eyeball and his eye started bleeding. And he's just like, looked at me like he was about to kill me. And I remember just like taking off, sprinting. I thought the only safe place where I'm not going to get killed is the principal's office. So I ran to the principal's office, and I like tried to barge into the office and try and figure out a way to get her to save me. The door was locked. She was away on lunch, so I basically just like curled up into a ball on the door, and the guy came over and he picked me up and he put his fist to my face, and he was about to basically punch my head in, and I swear I thought I was gonna die. And basically he goes to punch me, and then he puts his hand out and he goes 20 panga. That means $20.
Yeah.
So luckily, for whatever reason, we were pretty poor. We never had much money, but I had $20 in the back of my bag. Gave him $20. He rubbed my head and he said, "Good boy, good boy."
Oh, that's the matter settled, eh?
So that was it.
Oh,
So
shit,
I always made sure I had a bit of extra lunch in my bag, just in case you wanted to, bring it up again. So yeah, but yeah, you definitely learn to not get in trouble, and like you definitely don't want to make sure you pass all your math tests and your English tests, and you don't want to be getting hit for that stuff. So
hang on, mate. I'm just gonna grab my beer.
oh sure, go for it.
Whoa. Cheers, man.
Cheers. Good times.
Yeah, bloody good.
Sure.
Yeah,
Very good.
Here's to Cyclone Gabrielle.
Yeah. It's quite good actually. Like definitely one of my favorite. It's different experience being in the tropics when during cyclones, but it's almost a bit of nostalgia having a cyclone come, because my favorite time of the year in the islands is in the summer when the big cyclones come running through, and you get the category 5s up there, and
shit, yeah.
and you're
I imagine as a kid that'd be quite fun.
oh, just the best. You know school is out for at least 2 to 3 weeks. There's no chance the school would be flattened, or the roof ripped off or whatever. You knew you weren't going to school for 2 to 3 weeks easy.
Shit! I remember when I was a kid. I mean, we had Cyclone Bowler that came through here, and I was still at primary school, and we were on school camp actually, and I think the parents and teachers didn't quite know what to do, so they said, no one leaves the dormitory. So, but no, bugger that, man. We were out our place. I can't even think. It was out on the Waikato River somewhere at a camp. And we were up on the toilet cubicle watching all the trees come down around us. And pass an opportunity up like that.
Oh man, it's crazy. I suppose you can get. I know it's sad. A lot of bad things happens obviously in the storms, but you get a lot of energy out of it too. Just seeing nature and that.
Oh,
it's
just
crazy.
makes you feel I mean, I don't want to see anybody lose their shit.
Oh yeah,
it's all that part of it, and it can be devastating, but it just shows you how insignificant you are compared to the power of nature.
For sure.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, and I think the beauty of a lot of those cultures, were, especially back in the day, I know it's much different now, but seeing like cyclones rip through the islands when you're a kid, and everything, all the houses we live in or whatever, are made from natural products that are sourced right there on the island. So the thing gets, everything gets flattened, but you rebuild it.
Yeah.
2 weeks easy. You know what I mean? It's compared to now. And now we always imported materials over there, and cyclones come through, and you got roofing iron all of a sudden flying through villages, and all those other products that we're using. So a lot of that infrastructure just was designed the way it was best designed 100 years ago, and just for the environment that it's in. Because those cyclones come through every year. It's going to happen every year. Pretty much, so.
I mean, they do get hammered. It's just a fact of life for the islands. And so, what's a standard day, school or a weekend for like in the islands for a kid, man? It must have been so different.
For me, the biggest playground in the islands is the ocean. It's completely different, I from probably the age of 8 or 9, you're pretty much free reign over the whole island. So I could, as soon as school was finished, I had my surfboard or my spear gun or something, and you just hitch down to the beach, no matter where it was on the island. Your parents would be fine with you hitchhiking wherever on the island, and you go just be in the ocean, whether it be you go surf for 6 hours and then catch a couple fish and then hitchhike back, and but it was all around the ocean. Gathering food, surfing, and farming. I mean, like over there, that's the lifestyle. It's growing food, getting food, and cooking. Basically, it's 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 basic, but it's the way I grew up, I suppose. The ocean provided everything. It provided entertainment, laugh, and food and fun, and a lot of fun. So you get a big respect for nature, I think, real young. Just the humpback whales we get there, the reef sharks, all of fish life. It's just you never get bored of it. When you're 12-year-old and you can go and spend a whole day swimming the reefs, catch a fish underwater, you'd never get sick of it. Like it's like it never gets boring. You know what I mean? So it's.
I know my dad was a sailor too, so we were out from a young age. I get it, man.
It's addictive, and so I think a normal day was just get schoolwork done as fast as you can, and
so you can get out,
and get to the beach, pretty much. So,
what was the surfing like over there, man? Epic waves.
Surfing was unreal. So I mean, my dad doesn't surf at all. He was a sailor. He was quite a bit into spearfishing when he moved to the islands, but some people came to visit us from Hawaii, and they just left us 3 surfboards, me and my brothers. And we had never surfed, didn't really know anything about surfing. And we got these surfboards, and my brother had just got his license, and we started heading to the beach. We found like a surf camp. There's only one basically surfable beach on the island, which happened to be the opposite end of the island. And there's a guy there, Australian guy called Steve, and he ran a little surf camp, like a little association for the local kids. And we ended up going there. He taught us how to surf. He basically was like, just paddle out there. And I mean, here, it's a completely different ocean to here, like all reef break, waves are breaking on like a foot of water. You messed up, you got good tattoos on the reef. And, but I mean, you got like a group of mates of about 10, 15 kids, and you're surfing perfect reef breaks, like any day, every day, pretty much. So I just got hooked. My 2 older brothers moved overseas pretty young, but I was there a bit longer, and I just got addicted to it. The surfing side of things. So surfing was definitely my life for I think between I was about really ramped up between I was 11 to 14.
Just every day, hitting it every day.
Just I started homeschooling again because I figured if I went back to homeschooling, I could get school done earlier. So I'd be like, I'd get my work done by lunchtime, and I was get my surfboard straight into the water. And then I ended up moving to Fiji when I was 14. So that was probably the first time I left home. I did like an exchange student thing with some friends of my parents, and they were next to some surf breaks that I really wanted to go surf, and the guy was a Hawaiian dude who surfed, and so I went over there for a year.
Oh, wow.
And it was like an exchange student, and that family was homeschooling, so I was perfect. I can just surf every day, and moved there for a year, and then I had a horrible accident. One of my school projects, we built a half pipe. That would be cool. We had a half pipe right on the beach there. We could skate and surf. And we built it for our school project, and then like a couple of days after we finished it, I came off it and snapped my leg like completely in half, like just like full rupture, sticking out to the thing.
What the
femur thing, the whole thing just snapped it, and I'm lying there. We're like in the middle of heck of nowhere on the Coral Coast, and I'm screaming my head off, and there's blood, and I'm like just like mortified. I thought I was gonna die type feeling, just the pain and that, and call an ambulance. It took about 2 hours, and a Toyota Hiace rocks up with like nothing, no cushions, no nothing, just like a flat open back of a van with no
ambulance,
nothing, just no morphine, no
painkillers,
just a couple of Panadols maybe,
like a couple of Panadols and suck it up,
They checked me in the back of this Toyota Hiace, and we were like maybe 3 hours from Na-Lata where the hospital was, and we stopped in, and I was just in the back of the van, no windows, nothing, just screaming my head off. And I remember we pulled in, I think Nandi or somewhere, and there was a clinic, and they opened the door, and he's like, "Oh, we've decided to stop so you'd shut up, and we've got you some morphine." So I was screaming in the back of the van the whole way there. So they jacked me up with some morphine and Nandi, and I was like, I don't know, 14 years old. My parents were still overseas, and I ended up getting to Na-Lata Hospital, and gnarly experience. The hospitals over there, like I remember they tried to operate on it. It didn't work or something. And I'm lying in this room with like, I don't know, 15 other people. The dude next to me died. I think the second night I was there, he had like some sort of a lung infection. He was just coughing up blood all night, and he ended up dying. I couldn't go to the toilet, but the nurses wouldn't empty my bucket. So like, you're just lying in this bed. There's like no hygiene, nothing.
Oh man.
So 2 weeks go by, and the doctors are starting to talk about how they're going to get, because it got infected like real bad.
Jesus.
And
so they're talking about getting.
And so they're like,
so was your feet? Was a feet?
My leg, yeah, like right through. Like right between my knee and my ankle.
Oh, tibia.
Yeah.
Shit.
And so it got infected, and the dude died. I'm freaking out. My mum and dad happened to be back visiting family in Germany, so they were like ages away.
Oh, mate.
And so 2 weeks gone by. They'd try to. I've been on morphine straight for 2 weeks, just like wigging out as a 14-year-old, and my dad ended up flying all the way from Germany. I was like so embarrassed. I was like, "Oh man, Dad, I'm so sorry." Like it's like a lot of money for it. And like we grew up on like a couple $100 a month, like no money. We were like, my parents were volunteers, like any aid work or anything, like they were just there to help and whatever, like no money, nothing.
No,
like, we grew up on nothing.
Yeah.
So my dad they were going back just to visit family, and I felt so bad. Came over and basically walked in to the hospital, booked us flights to New Zealand and to the hospital, and basically just came in and picked me up and just walked like straight through down all the stairs, out the front door. The doctor's like, "No, you can't leave," and he was just like walked me out straight into a taxi, straight to the airport. He managed to get a hold of some dude in the yellow pages to sign the doctor's certificate to get me on a flight, and then flew over to Middlemore Hospital. And went straight into surgery. They managed to get me on the right antibiotics and stuff. And
bloody hell, what an ordeal! And that's your first time in New Zealand.
First time in New Zealand. So
welcome to New Zealand.
Yeah, I remember my dad. I remember we walked into the hospital and like just walking in and seeing like a clean hospital. Yeah. My dad just broke down. Like, he was just like, when you come from and. Just I suppose when you come from places, we've traveled quite a bit through like Philippines and Cambodia and quite a bit of other traveling amongst when we were living over in Ireland. And I suppose when you've seen third world stuff firsthand and you then come to a hospital in New Zealand, you're just like, oh my gosh, it's crazy. Like this, you can't even imagine it exists that the nurses that are friendly, are like clean for you, or so just the real basic stuff. Yeah, and they managed to fix it up. I was good to go, and then while I was in hospital, I was like, "Oh man!"
So that was surgeries and stuff, and
they got it. They got it all. All sorted out.
Bloody hell, mate!
And then while I was here, I was scrolling through. I think it was a newspaper, or I was talking to my dad. I was like, "Oh, what am I going to do now?" Like my year is up, and we ended up hearing about the Surf Academy in Raglan. So I was like keen as surfer. I was represented Fiji and Tonga at the Oceania Cup stuff, and I thought I was pretty good, but I found out I wasn't that good at all. Just like when you live on a small island, I'm meeting my mates, but like there's only like 3 or 4 mates.
Best by default.
Exactly. So I was like, oh my gosh, there's like this elite surf academy where you can go to school and you can surf and get credits for it. And like, this is the best thing I've ever heard of in my life. So I'm like, Dad, can I just stay? Like, this sounds like unreal. So that's how I ended up here.
So you're age 14?
So I think by that stage I just turned 15 or 14, 15, and so my dad, we drove after I got to the hospital. We drove to Raglan. Just drove to the school. Didn't call him nothing. We just went to the school and we're like, hey, my son surfs. He's like he made the Fiji team and Tonga team and this kind of stuff.
But he's in a cast.
Yeah, he's in a cast, but he's real keen on surfing. And he's like, can you go into school? And the guy was just like, it just happened to be like someone had pulled out of the academy. It was quite hard to get into the academy. Yeah. And they were like, the school had just outed, and they were like, yeah, sure. Yeah. So I was like, it was just like meant to be. So I was like, sweet. My dad like drove to some kids camp up on the hill. He's like, hey, is it sweet if my son like helps out, wash dishes, and he can sleep in one of those, like, got accommodation for him. So they found me a caravan up on the hill, and as long as you wash dishes, you can stay there for free. So my parents went back to Tonga and lived in Raglan, went to school, and lived my best life at 15. It was pretty cool. Yeah. So it was a cool. Like, I mean, it was the Surf Academy. I found pretty soon that I wasn't that great compared to the kids here. I remember rocking up going, I had like an old surfboard, but like all the kids here are like sponsored and new stuff and everything. And then I was like, oh shoot, I don't have a wetsuit. Like in the islands, you don't need a wetsuit. You know, wetsuit. You just surf in like your skin, you know. And I was like, and my dad, and I was like, I had like an allowance of like, I don't know, $20 a week. And I'm like, oh man, I don't have any money and I don't have a wetsuit. I remember showing up to the academy the first day. Everyone's like sponsored Billabong, Quicksilver, and here I am with like old ass board, thinking I was like cracked it because I was like Fiji and champ or whatever, and everyone's looking at me like, you got a wetsuit, dude? Like when we went out, it was I don't know, maybe April or something when I first started, and I was already getting freezing, and I didn't have no money. No wetsuit, no nothing. I remember saying like, oh no, I just don't like wearing wetsuit. I don't like I don't have one. I just trying to be trying to be cool or whatever. I'm like, oh, I'll get one, whatever. And surfed until like June with no wetsuit, freezing my ass off. And finally managed to get a little job and earn a bit of money and get myself a wetsuit. So I was away laughing. So yeah. So that got me to New Zealand. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
I mean that's a round and thereabouts, I suppose.
In a nutshell.
In a nutshell. Yeah. But yeah, I spent a bit of time in Hawaii in between there as well. Went on a bit of a summer holiday there. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, Hawaii's cool.
I was in Maui for a bit.
Yeah.
And Maui was a vibe.
Yeah, it's a vibe, eh? Mm-hmm. I was there once, and I remember saying to my dad, I said, like, I could live here for this time. Quite easily. Yeah, so good. Yeah, so good. I mean, and that was 30 years ago, but I imagine it's changed.
Yeah, I mean, that would have been.
I hear it's very expensive, and it was pretty expensive back then, but it was so good, man. Yeah, I loved it.
Yeah, I got a job at like a coffee roaster, and just roasting coffee and washing dishes and stuff, and just surfed every day and worked in the morning, surfed in the afternoon, and I had Tiger Woods, I think, was living there at the time, so he'd come in for the coffee in the morning. Oh shit, that was always pretty cool. Yeah, Laird Hamilton, a few famous dudes always rocking around those spots.
Laird, he's surfer, eh?
Laird Hamilton, he's got a Brazilian. I just remember him coming in with his like 3 kids, and the kids, like his wife is like, I don't know.
She's a
Olympic.
Olympic. What now? What is she?
Volleyball, beach volleyball.
That's right. Yeah. She's elite in her own right with the sport. Yeah.
They're both pretty. I suppose. I mean, Laird's an absolute beast of a human being. Like a Greek god, pretty much. So, like, imagine them together and their kids. I remember they would come in and they'd say, "Hey, Jono, look after our kids while we're having our." The kids would come out the back where I'm roasting, and I was super scared, because they would like climb up the fences and like just like base jump into the rubbish bins and that kind of stuff. I was freaking out they're gonna kill themselves, and it would be my fault and just absolute terrorists. But that was cool experience. Yeah, man.
And then so into what was your like transition from sort of that Raglan surfy lifestyle into getting into your work life?
I suppose finished high school, didn't really know what I was going to do. I somehow in amongst all of that got into basketball. But sorry, waking the microphone.
No, you're right, mate.
Where we were living in Tonga, there was a basketball court next door, and there's a bunch of like gangster deportees from America who were Tongans who overstay in America. They're caught up in the gangs and crime, and then they'll get sent back. And all of them were like into street ball basketball. So we used to go and shoot hoops with them every day after school or whatever when we weren't surfing or whatever. And that's where I learned how to play hoops. And I moved when I was at the surf academy. I ended up somehow getting dragged into the high school team and started doing really well at basketball. And then finished high school, and I started making like with the representative teams. I was like, shoot, I don't even know how I even got into this. Like, this is just bizarre. My style of play was, I suppose, much more aggressive and.
Oh, you're playing hoops with gangsters, bro.
Pretty much. And I was like, man, these kids are pretty soft over here. Like, you know what I mean? And then I made I remember trialing for like the Pistons back then. Like, some coach took me under his wing who was living in Raglan. This guy called Chris Tupu, who's an old ex-Tollback, and he took me under his wing for some reason. He just saw me shooting hoops at the school one day, and he's like, man, you could be really good. He started training me, and before I knew it, he was getting me into trials and all this sort of stuff. And I was into surfing and all that other stuff. This was like a side thing, and all of a sudden, I made the like with the Pistons team, like development team type thing, and I was training with Piero Cameron and all those type of guys, and so I was kind of like finished high school and like had this basketball thing going on, and I realized at that stage I wasn't going to be a pro surfer. I just wasn't good enough. I didn't have the whatever, but then I was getting really good at basketball and always liked building stuff. Like when I was a kid, I was either surfing at the beach or in like the bush making stuff and building stuff. And my favorite uncle in Wales was a builder, and I always wanted to be like him. So he was a builder. So I had all these things going on, and and then so I was kind of doing the basketball thing and surfing still. But a guy just offered me a job. He was like, I didn't really know what to do, and he was like, oh, why don't you just do an apprenticeship while you're waiting? I started an apprenticeship basically straight after I finished. When I was like 17, 18, while I was training and all that, and started building. And that did my apprenticeship, and then played a couple of years as like in the New Zealand national second division while sort of bench warming in the Pistons, and then got offered a position in the Nelson Giants. And I was because that's my old coach who picked me up in Raglan. He became the head coach over there, and he was like, "You're on my team." So, So I was like, "Sweet." But then I suppose it got to that stage where you're like, "How long am I going to pursue this? I'm not getting paid anything for it." Like at that age, you have to really make the decision. Financially, is it going to work? I suppose if you're playing National League in New Zealand, you're getting pretty much pennies. If you're top tier guys and you can play Australian League, then you can make all right money. But it just it wasn't. So you kind of are making all these life decisions. We're starting a young family at the time, so it's kind of like so met my wife in Raglan. We went to school together over there, so that was pretty cool. She's pretty cool. And so we had all that stuff going on. So I was just like, oh, you know what? I'm just going to finish my apprenticeship.
And you started having kids on the way.
Yeah, had my oldest Teo. He was on the way. So decided just to stick around Hamilton. And I suppose it's decided that I love basketball, but it probably wasn't realistic to make it a career at that stage. So.
But I hear you've made a bit of a comeback.
I have made a bit of a comeback. Yeah, my body's feeling it. I'm not entirely sure about this comeback anymore. It felt like a good idea a couple of weeks ago, and then I'm loving it actually.
It's good.
Pretty competitive, so it's good balance to life.
I've seen you play table tennis, mate. Competitive, right?
Shoot. Yeah. So. Did my apprenticeship with a guy called BT Builders. He was that was sort of the 2007 recession. So he took me under his wing, did a year for him, and then did a year for him. He went under. He was doing some dodgy deals with some of the female. Anyways, he was a nice guy.
I hope you guys are enjoying this.
He was a lovely guy. But his business went under, and then
I think a lot of businesses went
under.
It was a tough time.
Tough times, and bounced around a little bit. Worked for a guy called Begovic Builders. He's still around, actually, Sean Begovic. Cameron Young, and then they went under, and my brother was working at ITM at the time, and he was like, I was like, man, bro, I just lost my job. Every company I'm working for just keeps going under. I was a year and a half into my apprenticeship.
Shit. So you started in the
So it was like 2006, 2007, and then I suppose I was pretty driven. I suppose at that stage, and I didn't know jack all, but I was I had a young family. I was pretty driven. So I'm just like, bugger, I'm just going to start my own thing because I'm like, heaps of people were asking me to fix the bathrooms and stuff like that. So me and a mate who worked for Brad, we just started doing our own thing. I was only a year and a half in my apprenticeship, so we started doing bathrooms, kitchens, all that kind of stuff. But I couldn't finish my apprenticeship. So I was trying to get the BCRDO to sign me off on my own jobs that I was doing as an employee, but they wouldn't do it. So I did that for about 6 months and managed to... My brother ended up talking to Clapson Construction, CKC Holdings, these two brothers who are absolute legends. Like, I owe so much to those guys. My brother asked him, he was like, my brother really needs just to get signed off because he's got a family and he needs to finish his apprenticeship. And they were like, sweet, we'll hire him for 6 months. They do work for Housing New Zealand. They had a massive contract with doing disability New Zealand and Housing New Zealand and their own development stuff. And so they signed me up for 6 months. And back it was a bit old school, no building, no employment contract, just a handshake, and a word. And if you ever lie to me, boy, you wish you'd never born. And he looked me in the eyes and he's like, I trust you and I'll pay you, but you don't ever mess with me. Otherwise you wish you'd never born. And straight in the eyeballs. I swear, if my eye would have twitched down, I would have got fired right there.
Yeah, I know the type.
You're like hanging on there. Yeah. So, these two guys, hard-working fellas, just hearts of gold. Really just took me on, and I worked 6 months. They signed me out straight away, and then I ended up working for like another 3-4 years for them. They always knew I was gonna leave. I told them at the start I would start my own company and want to be independent like that. But I worked for an extra 3 years for them, and we built all sorts, a lot of motels around town, apartment. They had a lot of their own investment stuff, but just good guys. They helped us into our, just above and beyond stuff. Helped me into our first home. He like a lot of his development stuff. He needed to get rid of houses, so he gave us one of his houses that needed to get rid of, and funded helping us move it onto a section. And we had a little section in Norton which got us on the property market. Super young. Honestly, like, people in life that make a huge difference in your life, these guys are one of those guys who just hearts of gold. Looked after us and helped us out. And I couldn't speak more highly of the two brothers. They're still going around doing it. Hardest working fellas I know. And after another 3 years, I was pretty driven and motivated to start my own building company, design and build company. So, so after, I think I must have been about 22, 23 maybe at that age.
Just still a kid.
Still a baby, man. Still a baby. I might have been a bit older, maybe 23, 24 maybe. I don't know. Just started from absolute scratch. Just started our business, Debonair Builders we called it, and me, my wife, just started off first house. Did it for the CKC brothers, CKC Holdings. So the guy left. I did one for him. Did a couple other labor only contracts just to get started, but we were always wanted to be a design and build company, looking more into this little alternative. Zero waste, I'm just trying to get into more alternative stuff. With so I suppose out of the ordinary, good customer service and all that kind of stuff. So it really took off. Before we knew it, we were hiring all sorts of people and had all sorts of work coming in. And so it turned into a pretty pumping little thing.
And what was your sort of like design and build with and sort of emphasis on different like alternative energy and all that stuff?
Just I suppose a lot of emphasis on the design. I really like the concepts of simplifying building a lot more, just to the basics of what we need, being self-sufficient energy-wise, and just getting rid of all the extra frills and stuff. Just trying to develop a product that was I suppose enhancing to just a good lifestyle, like on the budget end of housing, but affordable, but had all the necessities that we needed to live a healthy life, I suppose. So that was sort of the niche I was getting into, and exploring a lot of the alternative products to reduce costs, just to have a product that young families could purchase that would I suppose tick all the boxes of a healthy home, but also affordable, and also I suppose bringing nature, I suppose, a little bit into our environment as well, I suppose. So making sure that the house was something that would feel good to live in, I suppose. And so exploring all different product types and that kind of stuff. That was really our drive at the start. I think we got probably a bit sidetracked. Really, we had, I think, being German and customer service and perfectionism, I suppose, being high on the I suppose, strengths. A lot of people really liked the experience, I suppose. So we got a lot of customers that we probably shouldn't have taken on because it wasn't outside of our sort of scope of what we wanted to get into. But because they were paying us a lot of money to build these nice houses, they're like, well,
start a business.
Why not? You know what I mean? So, it went. So it was me and Jess. She we both worked, did it together. Started it from scratch. We had a little office there on Sunshine Ave, and we did that for, I want to say 5 or 6 years all up. And then then life took a pretty drastic turn at that stage. I developed real bad mental health without even realizing it or knowing it, and it basically just ripped me to smithereens and ended all my capabilities of being able to do anything of the sort. So
it'll do that to you.
Just I didn't really know anything about it or knew that it was a thing or anything, and I've gotten so far down the track of it that there was basically no point of return, and an ability to keep doing what I was doing. It's just, it all came crashing down, and it basically was, turned into more or less a vegetable for about a year. Just completely.
Do that. And thank you for saying that, because it was bloody brave for you to say that. But I mean, it's a real issue.
Oh yeah,
people, you know. But it's bloody good to actually bring it to the forefront, because there might be someone out there that's at the start of something like that, you know, and it might be just listening to this podcast. It may lend a hand, you know, and just somebody, you know, as much as we all try and be brave and king shit all the time, you know, the mental health problems can affect anyone. Man. Yeah. So.
No, all good, man. Yeah.
So, like, just like, I want to get into this, what we were talking about the other day.
Yeah.
Because it really fucking interests me, mate. Yeah. So, like, you brought in some honey the other day. You harvested yourself from your own honeybees.
Yep.
And then we started talking, and it seems like the rabbit hole goes way deeper than that. So it sounds like you've got a bit of an alternative lifestyle out there. And you're growing your own food. You're regenerating the land to become so no fertilizers. So it's all natural, organic. So that's awesome, mate. I love it.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us a bit about that? Right?
So,
because it sounds like, I mean, I'm guessing that this is something that's been in you. I mean, you talked to a kid about being in nature, and
yeah, totally. I mean, I think if fundamentally, I mean, I for me, like, there's nothing more satisfying or fun spending the day getting food, like whether it be spearfishing, diving, like, getting stuff off the side of the road, just getting food and cooking it for people. And I love cooking as well. It's like sort of hand-in-hand thing. So food has always been a big part of, I suppose, culture growing up. In the islands on a Sunday, for example, is basically the whole day revolves, like in the islands, actually law, Sunday you can't work. In the islands, it's completely shut down. So on a Saturday, you'd prepare a big food of everything you can get, and then after church on Sunday, you'd just be a feast for the village, and you just eat for a couple of hours, and then just basically comatose, go to sleep, and that's your Sunday, you know. And so the whole idea of having a growing food, and it actually came a lot through my therapy. Because after Debonair was over, I had years of I suppose therapy to try and get myself to function again, and a big part of that was getting into rediscovering stuff that I was into as a kid, like spearfishing and stuff that engaged me with nature, I suppose, which was big in healing, I suppose. So gardening, look at pictures of me when I was a kid, 5 years old to 12. I was always growing stuff. I was always into my gardening and that kind of stuff. So a part of getting into it, and we actually, in the process of everything that happened, we lost everything. Like we had to sell our house, I couldn't work, I couldn't nothing. So basically everything, all our life earnings gone. and we managed to scrape together, sold everything, scraped enough to just basically purchase a bit of a section out where we live out now. After basically building everything back up again after we lost everything. Anyways, this bit of land was just a bare bit of land that the house had already been renovated, which is what we wanted. I didn't want to build nothing. I didn't want to know nothing about building. I didn't it was like so traumatic. I didn't even want to see a hammer, nothing. Like I was literally I was far away from building as I wanted to go. It was basically how I felt. And this house was a tiny little house that had just been renovated, but it had a big section. And I was just like, I just want to plant something. Like part of the whole therapy, growing, like planting stuff, is like I suppose gets rid of the control of having to do everything yourself. You plant it, then it has to grow. You know what I mean? And it's there's a lot in that, I suppose. And so we got 5,500 square meters of land that the guy who owned it before us, he had been there for 10 years, and the person before him was a grower as well. But he didn't want a single plant in this section. He cut down every single living plant those days. He just wanted to ride on lawnmower the whole entire thing. So we got there. It's a perfectly renovated little house, but
and a heap of grass.
A whole heap of grass, and I was just like, perfect. It's like a blank canvas. I can just start growing stuff. So we moved in there, and I was always tossing up the whole. Do I plant the whole thing with natives? I mean, I love nothing more than going into like native bush and just being like, this is freaking awesome. Like it's just the way it all works, the stratas, everything is amazing. I love to just do that, but then at the same time, I'm like, I love food, and there's not a whole bunch of food in native plants. So there is, but there's not a whole heap, I suppose. So
not a variety.
So I'm like, how do I combine the two and bring it together? So I started learning a whole heap about native plants and how the functions of them all, and trying to like, oh, maybe I can do it all in natives and just live off of that, and didn't get too. I mean, learned a whole heap about native plants, which is amazing. But then I came across Syntropic Agroforestry, which is like a combination of two. It's like basically the end goal is regenerated soils with native plants eventually, I suppose. So you basically instead of having like an annual veggie garden, which I have a little bit around my house though for the stuff I need around the kitchen and that kind of stuff, but basically you take a bit of land, and it takes a lot of design, I suppose, in it, but you plant it in a way that has a 50-year plan, I suppose, and you plant all sorts of things in there that help build a forest that regenerates the soil, gives you food every year. So you have like a first year, you have your annuals, you might have, say, potatoes mixed in, and then the second year you might have artichokes, and the third year you'll have your fruits starting to come on, and then by the 20th year you have raisin trees and nuts and all this kind of stuff. So you have this like succession plan of food security, I suppose, and mixed in with native stuff, but you basically finding plants that grow the fastest and that you can chop them and add them to the soil as quickly as possible. So I have all sorts of helper plants in there that every 6 months I'll go through with a machete and just chop the whole thing and put them into the soil. And I never I'll disturb the soil once to plant everything. So I might plant in a 20 square meter row. I might plant 200 to 300 plants. But I'll never touch the soil again after that. So
you're just letting it do its thing.
And then you intervene every sort of 6 months, and you're slowly getting rid of the helper plants will eventually get shadowed out by so you basically turn into a pruner as such. Like so with nature, you have these cyclones which come in and just wipe everything out, and then everything actually grows back a lot, but takes a long time. So you're kind of intervening a little bit as nature and doing these interventions periodically. And then it brings all the livestock, all the birds and things back into it, and they bring all the natives back into it. But the thing is, if you have like a paddock full of kikuyu and grasses, those seeds just don't have the space to be able to grow. But in something like that, the birds are brought in with the fruit, all the fruits that are in there, and they come and feed on that, and they'll shit out the seeds of all the natives that they've been feeding on. So you basically introduce like a little nursery that will then turn into a native bush as well. But in the meantime, you have the benefits of the food that will feed your family, I suppose. it's been a big journey learning, and I mean, it's a lot of. It takes the biggest part is learning what plants. So you're thinking of strata, you're thinking of height, you're thinking of lifespan, how long plants live, what kind of sun they need, what kind of companions they need. So there's a bit into the planning process, and then learning how to propagate. Because if you went and bought that stuff, you're paying thousands. So you have to learn about how to find the seeds and propagate them. So there's a whole bunch of knowledge and understanding how to propagate stuff. Yeah.
And are you doing? Because it sounds like a big healing journey for you, mate.
It is a massive healing journey.
Yeah.
Massive healing journey.
You know, it sounds like you're healing the land and healing yourself at the same time.
Something like that.
Yeah, which is a fucking great story, man.
Yeah.
I mean, it's those things. It's I know bouts of depression or mental health and stuff like that can just get you, you know, from nowhere. But it's in the doing that is the healer. You know, it's like finding something to, you know, and just being able to finding an interest or a hobby or something, you know, just to pull yourself out of it and get yourself moving again. You know?
Oh, totally. Yeah, it's massive, eh?
Yeah.
You can, I mean, it was a terrible, I mean, at the time, terrible for the family and for everything, but a lot of these things, you know, you look back at it and you go, oh man, like I'm glad that fork in the road came at that time and I'm not still doing what I was doing then, and I think it's I've got a lot to be grateful for Jess, my wife. She was like, you know, pretty amazing to have a successful business making shitloads of money, and you're, you know, all of a sudden, you know, it wasn't for her pulling the pin. It was her who was just like, you're not going to work tomorrow or the day after. You're done. Like you're you know, and I suppose having someone in your corner to looking after you and making those, you know, tough calls and helping you, it's you know, you never take that stuff for granted. You know what I mean? Those people in your life. So got a lot to be grateful for. To my partner Jess for the role she played.
Nice one, mate. I've met her a couple of times. She seems like a really solid mate.
She's a pretty grounded. And cool lady.
And to be honest, on the outside looking in, before tonight I had no idea of any of this.
Oh right.
Yeah. So I mean, thanks for sharing, man. And but because from the outside, and I look at your family and think, you know, you guys are, well, you're down to earth. You know, all your kids are polite, well mannered.
Oh, thanks.
You know, so you got a good thing going on there, mate.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, no, it's definitely a journey. The old family. Yeah. you think you nail it one day, and then next week you're like, oh, geez, I'm definitely not qualified for this.
Just at the start of puberty.
I got two of them in that stage. And all
just get the question, eh? You know? It's like, now, do I want to answer that like my parents, or do I?
Oh man,
do I want to take
it's actually crazy how the it's crazy how it changes over the generations, and just listening to, I mean, my dad's dad, I mean, they were Germans, obviously, and living in over the time of the history when they were living. They were over in Africa as farmers, and they were in a British prisoner of war camp for, you know, up to 5 or 6 years, and
because they just rounded them all up, eh?
Well, if you're a German and you lived elsewhere, you weren't on people. You weren't too popular, that's for sure. But I suppose you look at that sort of trauma that comes with, or whatever. You know, my dad's parents, after all those years, even after the war took ages, and then you're sent back to Germany, which is like, Germany is like flattened. There's nothing left of the country. No one cares about you. No one wants to know about you, really. You're the scum of the earth, even though you had really nothing to do with it.
Yeah, two major powers on either side fighting over the scraps, really. Yeah, that's what it was.
Exactly.
Massive wall chucked up, and
you know, they build their whole life from absolute rubble, I suppose. My dad's got 5 sisters, and you know, you get given find some land, and you're living in tents or whatever until you build your house back, and you know, and just a completely. You can't even imagine. You kind of like it's how you kind of so. I mean, like I'm so privileged, I suppose, to even contemplate what it'd be like living in that situation and that kind of poverty. I suppose. I mean, we grew up not much money, but I learned. There's the values I learned from my folks that didn't. There was nothing money related to it. It was all in, I suppose, helping people and and engaging with what was around us. We never had money.
Nah.
None at all. So
a good deed for a good deed. So
but I suppose my parents knew poverty. I never, like, even though we didn't have much, we always ate.
Yeah.
You know? We always had food. So but just looking at that, I suppose, level of understanding of like,
and that is real recent history.
Real recent history.
It's like a person ago. You know. I mean, I know I spent a lot of time. My auntie and uncle had a sheep station up the back of, up to the back of beyond. It was right out in the buoy. And every time I complained about, and it was like it was a working farm, so it's through my holidays there. But you always had tasks, and you're always doing something. And, you had to earn your keep, right? And being a little town kid and that, oftentimes I'd complain. And he had a picture on his wall of just a young kid, and just standing on the farm. He said, "Well, that boy there is 12 years old. Him and his father sailed over from Yorkshire." Came up on horse with a few supplies, bought the land, said, "Right, you stay here,
oh my God.
I'll go and get the family." So 3 months on a boat back to England. So this 12-year-old kid was tasked with making a shelter, start putting up some fences, So so
crazy, absolutely crazy.
Yeah, and now I get upset when I can't get on the Wi-Fi.
Oh man, that's so right. It's crazy how the technology's gone. It's hard to even comprehend. Like, would we even have a job if we didn't have Wi-Fi? Like, how would it go?
Yeah, I know, right?
Imagine our construction meetings if we felt any.
But I guess what it has allowed us is to run. I know the builders that I did my apprenticeship, but there'd be 2 or 3 jobs tops.
Oh
and you finish one and start the other. It wouldn't be like multiple things running. Yeah. So I guess the technology's allowed us to do that.
Oh, exactly.
So
exactly. No, it is crazy. But I couldn't ever imagine what we would do if we didn't have phones or internet or.
I know, it's like
because it'd be too hard to start. It'd be too hard to figure it out in a couple of days. So what would you do?
Yeah.
It'd be out of it, that's for sure. We're definitely reliant on it.
Probably save a few phone calls.
It would, yep. Yeah, man.
That's cool. So getting back to the overall, you've got a 50-year plan there. How long you been going? How long you been going at this, mate?
So we've been in there. We just had our 2-year anniversary on the property, and I think the first year I was kind of dabbling in how I wanted it to look, I suppose, or how I wanted to plant. So I started other things, and and then I found, I suppose, that this Syntropic Forestry, which really ticked all the boxes for me, I suppose. With I suppose I'm still merging with other stuff, but it really appealed to me the most. So there's quite a following, I suppose, in New Zealand of it. Joined some stuff and went to some courses and learned some stuff, and so I've got about 5,000 squares that I've still got to plant. So I've planted. The first bit's the hardest because you got to learn heaps and you got to start acquiring the plants that you want. So from here, it sort of snowballs from where you start, because you have cuttings and seeds that you're generating yourself. So so I mean the 50-year plan would be that the place is fully self-sufficient, I suppose, food-wise. I mean, that would probably be. I mean, already this year, the amount of food we've got out of the amount of food we've produced this year is crazy. Just think in a year, I suppose, of doing it, the amount we've out of 20 square meters, I suppose. So I suppose my dream would be, eventually once the years add up, and you're already starting to dabble into the 3rd and 4th year crop stuff, and the variety and everything's there. I don't know. I'd love it to be a place where people can. I'd never get into selling stuff at farmers markets or anything like that. It just doesn't appeal to me. But I'd love if we could supply I suppose one of the dreams would be like a living supermarket where we could 20 families and
help people out.
And 20 families, and they could, they had whatever, and they would just basically come and get their food from there once a week. They just come with their baskets and whatever their situation might be, come to a place where it's peaceful, good, nice nature, and all the food they could ever need. And whether it might be a healing journey for them or whatever, just a place where I can maybe pass on whatever knowledge I learn, whatever it might be, and I don't know. I'd love to build a couple cabins down there, just a quiet place where people could come and hang out if they were struggling with stuff, and just like a little retreat, I suppose. Yeah. My wife's a counselor. Yeah. I studied to be a counselor, so we'd set up a little facility.
Just to be of help.
Just somewhere where, a lot of times people are in these situations and they got nowhere to go. They just need somewhere to go to chill out and breathe, and they're in this hectic lifestyle that they just need to unwind and have a place where you could do that in a place that was offline, and you could learn about where your food comes from. Yeah,
nourish yourself
a little bit.
Natural food,
and eat some good food, and I know that's something that would have helped me, and I probably wasn't the intention at the start. I was just fascinated by growing stuff. That's where it started from. But the more I spend time down there, I'm just like, man, this is therapeutic. I was like, if I knew of something like this when I was going through what I was going through, and someone said, you can stay there for a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And
might just be the help that they need.
It might just be the help they need.
Well, that's fucking noble of you, mate, and the world needs more people.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. It really is.
Yeah. So I suppose in that dabbling with my father-in-law's a beekeeper, so he's got us into the bee thing, which is super cool as it is. They're one of the craziest. I've always wanted to do it, but until you have it and you have your first harvest, it's a crazy bit of nature where you're like...
So in the beekeeping, right, so I know a little bit about it because, again, like I'm one of those guys who's really interested in shit like this but never done it. Just my situation, and, live in bloody Hamilton East. But, it's I've always sort of really... And so what I know of it, right, so a hive setup, is it... I've heard it's more like 80 to 90% female worker bees, right, and the queen, and the male population is 10 to 20%,
something like that. Yeah, I'm not too clued up on all the science of it or what's going on. I'm very new to the bee side of things.
Yeah, it's absolutely fascinating when you get into the actual hive politics and how it all works, man.
100%.
It's just and it just. A hive of bees, but there's so much more to it, eh?
There's heaps. Yeah, my father-in-law, he's a guru at it, and he's teaching me slowly. But it's super fascinating. Yeah, super fascinating. We had our first sort of tester harvest a couple of weeks ago. We've had them now for I think 3 or 4 months, and just observing them when you're in the garden and doing your thing, and they're I can sit there and watch them for hours sometimes. Do what they're doing, and then I suppose the process of harvesting and just the flavor you get out of homemade honey, and knowing it's coming from all the flowers and all the bushes around you.
Yeah, of the immediate environment.
Immediate environment, and it's got you'll find. I've never thought, like, when you bought a supermarket bought honey, to really look into the flavor of the honey. Like, you don't really use like it's honey. Now, I suppose.
And that's the other thing too. I mean, apart from like any beekeeper would say, buy as local as you can from someone that's a beekeeper and harvesting honeys, because like some of these big brands is like half. I think they're using cane sugar. Making a honey mix. Yeah, that's what's just unfortunate, but you've got to feed the masses, right?
That's it. Yeah. That's it. Yeah. But just I suppose the diving into the flavor of the honey that we got from our place, breaking it down. I've never thought about doing that with honey before, but all of a sudden, like when my father-in-law tasted it, he's like, "Oh, I can taste a subtle this subtle that," and I'd never thought about tasting honey like that. It's like almost like wine tasting, almost. You know what I mean? The tinge of this and that, and then you start really like exploring the palate, and you're like, "Oh my gosh, I can taste that," and then
and it's going to get more and more interesting as the years go on and as your property develops. And,
totally,
it's going to be an interesting quest.
Yeah. So, interesting to see how that goes. There's plenty to learn in the bee realm of things, and
so I mean, any other things? I mean, in that sort of wheelhouse that you.
I'm not a huge. I mean, we at the moment we've had to keep a couple of animals because of just keeping grass down while we're planting, but we haven't been too good at it, to be fair. Just about lost a couple of sheep, and one of them had a fly strike. We didn't pick it up early enough, and then spent the day picking maggots out of his back. No, I wouldn't do that again. But it survived. It came back. I'll probably go. I'd probably like to get some goats. A couple of milking goats eventually. Not at the moment. I can't really do that before I come to work in the morning.
Nah.
Come like stinking like goat.
So little artisan cheese factory.
I'd love to get in a couple of goats, just for the cheese. I love goat cheese.
Yeah.
I love cheeses in general. I mean, Germans, we love cheese, man.
Yeah, of course.
We go back home. We used to go back quite a bit to visit family, and managed to go and take the kids over to visit my Oma before she passed away a couple of years ago, just before COVID, and this the cheese world over there. It's another ball game. Man. It's really you can't even compare to
the whole of Europe. I mean, you get. I mean, it is another ball game.
Yeah.
We used to get along. Oh, because I was in the UK for years, and I've travelled to quite a lot of Europe.
Yeah.
And even in London, there was a place called the Borough Market.
Yeah.
And it was just like a Saturday and Sunday, massive place.
Yeah.
But it was under, I want to say Waterloo. Oh, I might be talking out my ass here, but I want to say it was like under Waterloo train station.
Yeah.
And like just the cheese section alone, bro. I remember taking my dad there, like when he was still alive, and he was just like a kid in a candy store. Right? Cheese.
Oh, it's crazy. Yeah.
There's quite a few Europeans I've met, and they go, "Oh, I really love New Zealand, but your cheese is shit."
Cheese and wine, they hate our wine too.
Yeah,
right?
which is crazy since we come, like we're a dairy producing.
Oh no, I don't know what it is with why we can't make the cheese that great, but
I think as time goes by, like people are really getting into that sort of smaller. You see what's happening with beer. Just for a start. There's little breweries popping up all over the place, and so hopefully they sort the cheese out.
Yeah, man, for sure. Yeah, I love it. Cheese and pantries. One thing I want to build at my house is a nice pantry. Like over in Europe, all my family over there, you go to their house and their pantries are massive, and it's all their homemade stuff, and just like shelves and shelves and shelves of wines and cheeses and preserves and all that kind of stuff. It's
Do you get into a bit of that?
I love it. A lot of the preserving stuff. More and more, it's just a time thing. Like I love to do more, but I enjoy it as much as growing stuff. Is like if I have a weekend, nothing much on, and I'll just go and just pick whatever I can find, and then just find a way of preserving it. It's fun.
It's
super fun.
It's good fun.
And it's nice stuff to give to people too. Like if someone comes over, grab a bottle of this or whatever. So, it's. I think when you get into an abundance of that stuff, the necessities that you need, the food, and you're growing it in a way that's sustainable, and you have an abundance of it. I've never felt I was more fulfilled in ability when you have the ability to do that. And it's like this, I suppose, happiness or it's the basic stuff. You know what I mean? Like when you have abundance of food that's grown, and you know
exactly where it's come from.
You know exactly where it's come from, and all that kind of stuff. So
I think that and it's been lost. To a certain
it is
extent.
a little bit. Yeah.
It
is. Yeah.
I know, and I mean, a lot of people here. I mean, luckily enough, we live in New Zealand. It's a beautiful country. We've got access to all that sort of thing. But a lot of the world, it's not.
No, you did it right. I've actually got a cousin who's going to come and live with us for a bit. On my mum's side, they live in Edinburgh, and they've been on they live in downtown Edinburgh in the city, and they've been on a waiting list for 10 years to get a plot in the communal garden.
Yeah.
That's just like on the outskirts of the city.
Yeah.
That's how long they needed someone to die in order for them to get an allotment.
Yeah, I mean, I tried to get an allotment in Surrey when we were over there.
Yeah.
And just on a waiting list, and I'd left England by the time I was even considered. But yeah.
So I mean, it's crazy for them to think that you'd be able to buy land at the scale that we have, I suppose. And you think a lot of it's probably quite well underutilized, I suppose. Of what. When people, a lot of people live with big scarcity of land, I suppose. So we're definitely very fortunate here, for sure. Yeah, very fortunate. It's a beautiful place, that's for sure.
It is, yeah. Hey, mate. Well, look, where are we at? Oh, shit, I've been rambling on for over an hour.
Have we?
Yeah.
Oh, mate.
No, that's good, mate. You've led a bloody colourful life, mate.
Thanks, man.
And thanks for coming in on this horrible night.
No, it's
doing this, right? It was bloody short notice, but I do appreciate it, mate.
No worries.
Good
it's my privilege. Yeah, man, anytime.
It's
cool. Like I said, I'd never done a podcast before, so.
Well, I'm sure you've only touched on it, mate, and there's some plenty more stories, so you're welcome back anytime, mate.
Oh, man. No, I appreciate you having me, It's always good times working together, so.
Yeah. No, good man. You probably like me and don't have a lot of socials, do you?
Socials?
Yeah. I just tell by that you don't.
Yeah. Actually, I didn't for ages. But I'm pretty heavy in the plant sharing world, so it's super hard to do it without being on socials, like just as far as like plant sharing groups and that kind of stuff. So I wasn't for ages. I went off it a lot of my rehab years. I went off of it completely just because it was adding to a lot of my problems. So I didn't for ages, and then just the amount of in the whole world of growing and plants and that kind of stuff. There's so many knowledgeable people out there, especially in your community, that you just can't find otherwise. So I did jump back on, and have made trying to find, I suppose, the positive in something that has so many negative effects everywhere. I was just like, there's one positive there. That I can connect with the people around me to give plants, to get plants, to learn stuff, and so I just see it for what it is, and use it for what I need to use it for, and so.
Well, if you're happy for us to drop that in the descriptions, if anybody's listening that's keen on that sort of thing, it's a good start point, man.
Sweet as. Yeah, all good.
Cool. All right, mate.
All right,
thanks
been
a
good.
lot.
Cheers,
Thanks,
Luke.
guys. Cheers, eh?
Thank you.